This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Our show doesn't take a hit when Tom Murphy jumps on. It takes a jump as we welcome him into the program. Tom, as always, we appreciate your time this morning. I want to start with Jordan Walsh. Leaving the window open, was very clear about that in his conversation with Curtis Wilkerson. Does that change your vantage point on what you think he's going to do with his future? Or are you pretty dead set on him moving forward?
Well, I mean, it's nice of you to introduce me that way, Ty. I appreciate it. Always enjoy being on with you guys. I think it's up in the air for him. And as for what I think, it feels to me like he needs another year in college. When you think about, what his game is, I think he needs to play with a little more confidence. I think he was always giving way basically to the other offensive guys on this team. Mm-hmm. And he has his own style, but I think we need to see more of that. And I just don't see how the assessment for him right now would be, you're ready to go play in the NBA. I mean, he could probably play overseas, but I think it'd be smart of him to come back to college.
Tom, when you look at his stats, 7 points, 4 rebounds average, shot 43% from the field, 71% from the line. You're talking about him coming back potentially. Can you see him making a big jump, becoming a first all-SEC player, expanding his game offensively? I saw an unselfish player last year. Can you see him taking a giant step in year two?
I can see him taking a good step, and the word I was looking for a minute ago was deferential. He was deferential to the scorers, the ball handlers. He got the ball on the wing sometimes, and I do think he was not unselfish. I think he passed up shots. I think his ball handling skills need to improve, and also he's a guy who drew a lot of fouls, and he didn't get a lot of called on the opposing team. And so I think his stature in the league will help, it will rise, and I think that will get him more foul calls. I felt like the imbalance of fouls called against him versus fouls called, on him was pretty substantial. So he's got a decent jumper, and I just think that his cleaning up around the basket, putbacks and things like that were big. But I also think displaying a mid-range jumper would be in his best interest this coming year.
Yeah, but just to counter some of what you were talking about with the fouls there, I mean, any of us could watch and see there were times, and this wasn't always the case, but he'd come in and it seemed like he'd have 2 or 3 quick fouls where they were just obvious fouls where he was out of position, put his hands on people. It was just poor defense. And he'd have those stretches where I don't know if he was frustrated with the moment, outmatched. I don't know that necessarily was always the case, but Tom, he'd have spurts where he would commit 2 or 3 fouls in a short amount of time, and they were no doubters because of just being out of position with his feet.
Yeah, a physical kid, and I do think learning how to move his feet faster will be to his benefit. I just think that a lot of times when he drove in, there was a lot of physicality on the inside, and it wasn't called as well. But that kind of stuff tends to even out. But I do believe that, and we talked about it during the course of this season, that, he was prone to drawing a lot against him. And I think, as he improves as an offensive player and his stature rises in the league, he'll get more calls.
I think, his technique will improve. So what kind of situation does this put Musselman and his staff in, trying to figure out how to get the best 13 scholarship players on your roster? You've got 2 players that have left the door open to come back. You've got a third one with L. Ellis that's in the same bucket, if you will. How do you manage this roster when it may be the end of May before you officially know what 3 of your players out of your 13 are going to do?
Well, and that's the tricky part for everybody involved. I mean, there could come a time where they proffer enough scholarships to other guys, and they take them, and they'll say, I'm here, I'm committed, that you run out. And so it's a delicate balancing act. I think making sure they have enough 6'9", 6'10" guys, that's why I think Mekhi Mitchell's his position next year, if it's with the Razorbacks, I think they'd really like to keep him. Walsh's height and rebounding ability is something you can tell they're going to need, because as you look at the shape of the roster, there's a lot of guards, a lot of backcourt,
right?
And the shot blocking, physicality, the Mekhi Mitchell type game, and I do like his game. You're going to need a couple more of those guys.
Yeah, because if you took Walsh out of the equation, you still got Trevin Brazile who can get a rebound, and you mentioned Mitchell. You start adding up or just kind of listing out the front court guys, you run out of names pretty quick.
Yeah, you do. Or you got Bay, but it's you're right. It's a smaller list, and I understand positionless basketball is the thing that's growing, but I always still like to see a 6'8", 6'9", 6'10" guy out there that's going to defend, protect the rim, and be physical and get rebounds. And sometimes you need a couple of those guys to, pick up, your fouls. When you're playing a Sonogo or somebody like that, you're going to have to give some fouls, and you don't want to have to, those to go to the Brazil type guy.
We're talking with Tom Murphy, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette and Whole Hog Sports. Tom, switching it up to baseball, do we see Brady Tiger back in action this weekend?
Based on the way Dave Van Horn talked after the win over UCA on Tuesday, I think he felt pretty good that Tiger was going to be ready to go. Maybe an inning or two. I know he's traveling with them, and they have to submit their participation roster of 27 men today. I think Tiger's been traveling with them, and we've seen him throwing in pregame. And so I don't know. I get the sense that they believe he's going to pitch this weekend. And, if he's on point, if the elbow doesn't give him a problem, then they might get more flexibility with what they can do with Hagen Smith. To me, I look at this team, and it's just such an amazing feat that they've lost the number of games they have from Tiger and Cody Frank, and they've managed to piece it together and win the number of games they have won with a starting rotation on the weekend that's Hunter Holland and 2 TBAs. It's just a tribute to Dave Van Horn and the staff. With all the injuries, Wagner's been out for several games now, and they've missed other player games that they've done what they have.
And Jackson Wiggins being out for the season as well. Tom, to that question about Tiger, it looks like he is going to be on that travel list, like you said, because he's been traveling with the team. If you were in Dave's shoes, would you save him for a midweek game next week and not put him back in the pressure of a road situation? How would you go about putting him in the fold?
Well, they obviously have a lot more intel, what he's looked like in his bullpens, and I don't think you wait. If he's ready, if his arm is ready, then you put him in, even if that's a high-leverage situation, a 4-3 lead in the ninth with runners on. If his arm is ready to go, then you throw him. I mean, he's done it before. He has confidence. And it's really all about him believing that he can put that torque on his arm, on his big breaking ball, because that's such a go-to pitch for him. But he also has a great fastball. But I don't think you wait for a midweek when there's less pressure on him. I think you put him in when his arm says he's ready.
Yeah, I think all you got to do is go back to what you were talking about with what Dave said. And if he's on the 27-man, he's going to pitch, and it probably changes your rotation and who you are going to start. So that will be interesting as we maybe learn that detail a little bit later on today. So you got Georgia A&M, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt to close the last four SEC series. We're just past the midway point in SEC play. Kind of what would be your evaluation just past midterms of where this baseball program is at right now?
That a team that's putting it together and winning games at a higher rate than I thought they would. LSU's clearly got more talent. I mean, you saw what happened in the doubleheader down there, but they haven't won as much as Arkansas has. There's some difficult series left. Those last 6 games against South Carolina and Vandy are going to be very difficult. You'd want to have a nice lead. If your plan is to win the division, you'd want to have a 2 or 3 game lead going into the final weekend at Vandy. But you can't discount A&M. I know Mississippi State is struggling, so it looks to me like they've got 3 series against Georgia and A&M and Mississippi State that they should be favored in, that they should win the majority of those games. And then the South Carolina series here, difficult. They're hitting a lot of home runs. But Arkansas has managed to tame some of the hot hitters in this league. I mean, Dylan Cruz had his games against Arkansas, but there's been some others, some Auburn's top hitters that they really held down. So I think Arkansas is ahead of pace. Their 30 wins this year were the third fastest for a Dave Van Horn team, which is pretty amazing, behind the 2021 team. They did 30 wins in 35 games, and the 2010 team won 30 in 36 games. So they've done it in 37 games. You get Will McIntyre back on track. You find a way to get Hagen Smith. What they've been getting out of Hagen Smith is, 45 to 55 pitches on the weekend, and you'd rather get more pitches for him, but it doesn't appear they can do it over the course of 2 games. So figuring out what Hagen Smith is going to give you on the weekend is a big deal for them.
Hey, before we go, real quick, Landon Rogers, a tight end / wide receiver for Arkansas, has entered the transfer portal. What do you think the portal looks like moving forward? That's one player. How many more do you expect to maybe be on that list before maybe the weekend is up or early next week?
Yeah, I just think it's going to be a little, more minimal. I mean, they had their losses and defections during the course of camp and, during the year. And during winter and stuff, they lost a lot of guys. And so the guys who go into spring ball with you are pretty generally the ones who are going to stick around. For Landon Rogers, the depth at quarterback was a little bit more for him to overcome. I think he was more of a project guy who really needed to develop. He gets on campus, and pretty soon he's a tight end, and then he's a receiver. He's got a nice body. He's a physical kid. I saw him make plenty of good catches during spring practices. Hate to see him go, but he was a little bit deeper on the depth chart. So perhaps somewhere he'll either be a premier receiver for somebody or might get back into the quarterback play. I'm not sure what his plan is.
Get analysis of every play, prop, and point at BetOnline. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to sign up and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE to receive your bonus. That's BLEAV. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts.